Welcome to PaleyFest. I'm Maureen Lee Linker of Entertainment Weekly, and I am delighted to be your host for this special festival conversation celebrating Big Sky. Special thanks to PaleyFest's official card, City, and welcome to the City card holders watching the show. And thanks to festival sponsor Verizon for helping to make this event possible. Today, we are thrilled to welcome members of the gifted cast and creative team of Big Sky. Joining us are executive producers Ross Feynman and Matthew Gross, and cast members Catherine Winnick, Kylie Bunbury, John Carroll Lynch, Jesse James Keitel, Brian Garrity, Natalie Allen Lind, Jade Pettyjohn, Brooke Smith, and Valerie Mahaffey. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you.
Hi.
Thanks for having us.
Yay.
Oh, Kelley.
Well, I'm going to kick things off by asking about the man behind Big Sky, David E. Kelley, who couldn't be here today. I'm curious for all of you, he's such a prolific figure in television. How has David shaped your work and the show, and what has impressed you most about him working with him? Matthew and Ross, do you want to start, since you probably have the most interaction with David of everyone?
Well, David's quest was really simple. And I say simple quest, but it's hard to actually do it, but he's the master at this. He said, let's just create a great thriller. The people come for the thriller, but it'll stay for the characters. And I think that, if you look at the cast here, I think we did that, wonderfully. They're greatly written characters and beautifully performed. And that's really what it started with. It's just a thriller that people will come to see and stay for these great characters.
And I would say that aside from, being one of the great writers of our generation and supplying us with amazing material to produce every week, I would say the greatest thing about David is that he empowers people. He allows them to bring their own creative voice and their own artistry to the process. And that takes, great wisdom and confidence. And so I would say that's probably one of the things that I've learned from him.
Any of the cast want to chime in before I ask another question?
Well, for me, when Ross approached me originally, it was kind of a no-brainer. It's David E. Kelley, in the sense where he's, like everyone said already, he's one of the most well-recognized and most well-respected writers of our generation, really. I've been a fan of his back in the day since Ally McBeal, and also knows how to write strong women characters, and also characters that are great villains. And that is something that's very attractive as an artist. For me, it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to dive into another TV show right away, but I knew that I would be in good hands signing on to something like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this season has been full of one shocking cliffhanger after another. I mean, my fingers are getting tired from hanging on to that cliff. For you, what shocked you the most, each of you? And what was your reaction to it when you first encountered it, whether it was in a first read of a script or some other circumstance? Kylie, why don't you start?
It's funny that you asked me to start, because I actually gave away the ending of the pilot on Good Morning America.
I couldn't believe you did that.
It worked.
You were tired, Kylie. You were
It was
tired.
very early in the morning,
tired,
very
But I
early.
definitely just had a spike of anxiety when you asked me first. No, I mean, I was definitely shocked that that ABC wanted to take a risk in this way. I feel like the show is such a departure from what they usually do. And for them to entrust David Kelley and us to go this darker, more, a little bit more sinister route with shocking twists, I think was a really cool thing for them to do. I don't want to say more about it because I don't want to give anything else away.
Oh God, Kylie.
I'm gonna jump in. The other thing, the pilot was so shocking. The end of the pilot was so shocking. But what has been extraordinary is that every episode is shocking. Every episode has moments where, when you're reading the script, you go, "You're kidding me." Like, where are they going to go from here? How's that possible? And it just keeps going and going. Every single script that I read has been like that. So, I mean, that's a real tribute to the writing staff and to David, and the fact that each character's agenda flips the whole thing over, one after the other, after the other, after the other. Everybody has a chance, as Ross says, to carry scenes, but more importantly, the scenes actually change the dynamic of the story as it goes along. There's no scene that isn't valuable. There's no scene that doesn't have a chance to turn the whole thing a different direction, which is a magnificent thing to work on.
Yeah, and to that end, you know, David and Ross and myself wanted to make sure that we ended every episode with a mic drop, with something that's going to keep the audience coming back for the next episode. And I recall on episode 4, you know, at the end of the episode, David said, you know what, let's take the beginning of 5 and put it on the end of 4. And that's the scene when Legarsky is walking up the stairs with a hammer. And it was something so simple, yet so perfect, that for days I was beating myself up like, why didn't I think of that? I should have thought of that. You know, and then I realized, you know, I'm playing basketball with Kobe Bryant. I mean, David Kelley is so precise, and he doesn't stay, you know, he's not precious about the material. He doesn't stay married to just something that's on the page. He wants to make that experience through a thriller. And if it doesn't push the story forward, as John mentioned, he'll cut it. He'll cut it. He just, you know, he's really objective that way, which is rare.
Well, speaking of cutting things, Matthew and Ross, was there anything in the writer's room or just in development in general that was going to be a twist, or something you batted around that you're just like, no, that's too wild. We can't do that.
Nothing's too wild. You know, I've been with this project since the inception, and we kept playing with when does Cody die? And for a while there, was actually in the second script, and there was a great cliffhanger, which I can't remember at the moment, but at the end of the first script. But no, everything's you know, everything's fair game right now. I love, I'm 100% sure this is going to air. This panel will air after our 9 or 10 episodes will be on the air. Episode 9 airs tomorrow night, and all I can say is I've seen it probably 25 times, and every time I love Brooke more and more. It is such a
Can't wait.
It's so great. It is so she's so awesome in episode 9. It's fantastic. And what David does beautifully is he creates these characters that you love, and even the bad guys that John and Brian are playing are people you like them in spite of yourself. You want to go home. You go home with them. Yeah, you go home with them. You fall in love with these people. And you know, Brian and John have these roles that, you know, under other with other hands may not be as good, but they've delivered so well, so great on their 2 roles that you just love these characters. You love these bad guys who you actually like them, which is hard to do.
Wait, Ronald's a bad guy?
You should probably take that off air, Brian. We should probably take that deeper conversation.
No, I didn't know.
I know, right?
Well, I don't know. Why do you ask Natalie, Jade, Jen? I don't ask them.
Yeah.
Brooke, speaking of episode 9, without getting into specifics, what was your reaction when you read that?
Oh my God. I read it right before the holiday break. And so then I had the whole holiday break to, you know, freak out about it, AKA let it settle in. Of course, it's fantastic. I mean, I loved it. I loved when I read it. It was tricky to do. And I was going to say, one of the things I really like about David's writing is there are times when I don't actually know how to play a scene, or I don't, but there's something about just saying the words that really seems to work, you know? And I don't know, John, we did that scene together. What do you think?
I mean, it was speaking for a person who's pretended to kill a lot of people. You did a great job pretending to kill people. That was awesome. So good job. And but also, I just in the writing, there's air in the writing. There's an opportunity for, as Ross described, performance choices. There's a way to bend it. There's a way to jazz riff on it without ever changing any words. And a lot of times when I read scripts, you find the one way that it can be read, and that's the only angle you have into the scene. And that never feels this way. It never feels this way. It always feels airy. During those, some of those in episode 8, we hadn't gotten episode 9 yet. So there was no real understanding, truthfully, if Legarsky was lying or not. And we were shooting it. And at one point, Matt came in and goes, "How are you playing something you have no idea
how it's gonna go?
It's true or not? Like, how are you doing that? Like, how is that possible?" And it's like, because there's room in it. There's room to play the knife's edge and to not be ahead of it. And most of the time there's a lot of guiding that actors do to fulfill an outcome, but there's no need for that here. There were many, I'd love to hear Valerie's take on this. There were many different permutations on, in scripts where Helen Pergman would go completely one way and then completely other in the next, like the draft would come back and go, "Oh no, it's not that Helen Pergman at all. It's a totally different Helen Pergman."
Yeah, I
watch.
The longer I've lived, the more I love things that have the possibility to be messy. And that was such a joy. And I didn't have a stinker of an actor to play opposite. I adore Brian Garrity. He's the only one I got to act with. I made friends with just about all of you. But Brian and I had room, and I just loved that every take of ours, and I think he agrees with me, that we could, like you're saying, John, we could do it this way, and then the next take would be very different. And what a pleasure. It's a testament to him and to David's writing and, the leniency of everyone to let it go. Who knows? I really enjoyed that.
I love the brutality. Can I just say something? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I love the intensity and the brutality between you and Ronald, in that scene. And I'd watch the dailies and I'd watch all the cuts, and he'd grab you and push you, and cut, and he'd go, "Are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay?" And finally, you're like, "I'm tough. I can handle it." It's like you were very gentle there, Brian.
Yeah, it was nice that I would hear that out
the
of
nice
him,
stuff.
Well, no, it was horrible, but I was so moved actually by him almost sitting on my lap trying to retrieve me, and I just never mind. It was wonderful.
What I really love about this also too, it really feels like the writing, it's there, and thank you for with the people that are in terms of writing it and ABC, they're taking risks from the casting choices that we already mentioned, but also just with the dialogue and, touching upon the sex trafficking, and they're taking risks. And I love that. And I want to encourage, as we continue to go on, to keep doing that, because I think that's really changing, in my mind, what network TV is, and making people that you don't realize that you're watching it on something that is a typical kind of a vehicle, but you're really involved with the characters and you're really kind of taking it. And the other thing I found really interesting, I just feel like I just saw you guys yesterday. We just shot 9 just a few weeks ago, and here we are about to air it. And we have such a hardworking crew, and with Matt and Ross in terms of getting it out there, and in terms of post, and really getting it out there and cranking it out so people have it really just a couple of weeks or a few weeks after we finish shooting it. That says a lot.
Yeah, the schedule is intense. You guys are crushing, doing a great job. I just have to say, there's one scene that sticks out in my mind over and over. I love is between Ronald and Jerry. That moment when he takes her
in
aside,
the truck.
just takes her aside and has her. He wants to get her ready to do his. They're going to dispense of her somehow, and wants her to shower. And it's just a beautiful scene. It's such a fantastic moment between the two.
All of their scenes together are really beautiful, like hauntingly beautiful, because he's such a bad guy.
Yeah,
but he's not completely. Not completely.
No idea how we're going to shoot that.
There's something there's something there, like and working with Brian, like Valerie said, is a dream. And I think the two of us naturally have great chemistry on screen, but there's just this like cosmic connection between Jerry and Ronald, and he's doing these horrible things to her. But arguably life has also done some horrible things to her. And so I think in a weird way, she's being tased and kidnapped, but there's like almost a sense of hope in that relationship. Like, not that she's going to find love in Ronald Pergman, but that even in like the darkest moments of this girl's life, she can still have a connection that's like beyond what she's experiencing that moment. I don't know. There's something there, and it's pretty.
You grant him such empathy, Jesse. You grant him such empathy over and over again in all of your interactions, and I think that's what makes that connection sing.
Thank you.
I just want to jump in one real quick thing, and then I'll let you actually ask a question.
This is great.
The thing that provides the opportunity for the darkness that is in the show is the rays of light that are created by the courageous actions of the people who would, in other hands, be victims, as opposed to people being victimized. The young women who are kidnapped, in every circumstance, there was a sense of, even in the darkest place, a sense of light and hope. And that is crucial to drama, beyond network television, beyond anything else. Nihilism is boring to me. I mean, there's got to be hope. Otherwise, there's no drama. And their unwillingness to yield to that darkness allowed for me to go to really twisted, dark places and know that there was still going to be a relief of a shot of light through the transom of that cage.
You talk so fancy, John.
I know, doesn't he?
My goodness.
And he has all the equipment too.
Boy.
I credit Natalie and Jade and Jesse with providing that hope. And without that sense of hope, and without their harmony, literally,
and the strength,
absolutely,
that is what I love. They didn't play the victims;
absolutely
they played the strength and the power that to get through this. And
well, Jesse's staying with us, as people will know about who still watch the show. But I think Natalie and Jade have created a great relationship between the two of them off camera, and I think there needs to be a spinoff of those two sisters somewhere. I'll tell you, they're just too good to let them go.
Big Sky, Colorado.
Adventures. Yeah.
Right.
Big Sky, Colorado. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Big Sky, Colorado.
People have talked about the network taking a lot of risks. And of course, killing Ryan in the pilot is a huge risk. I keep saying it reminds me of Psycho. You put Janet Leigh on the poster and then all of a sudden Janet Leigh is dead. And so for Ross and Matthew, you ended up using him very sparingly in these flashbacks. Was there any talk at any point of him having a bigger presence, and did COVID limit any of that in terms of being able to bring him back?
Well, it limited bringing him back because once you leave Canada, you've got to come back and quarantine for 2 weeks. And, that just makes it hard for him. But no, I think the big score for him was, the big score for us was to have, you think is the lead of your show, being killed in virtually the last frames of the pilot. So the network president, Carrie Burke at the time, who's now the president of our studio, actually asked us to do more scenes with him for flashbacks, which I thought was a great idea. So he actually did some more work for us. Sadly for him, though, he started with us a year ago, March, a year ago, and he only wrapped up, I don't even know when it was, October, probably. He stayed a lot longer than he intended to, but he was a great guy, great trooper. And I think we used him just the right amount.
Yeah, he was a very good sport because he stayed up here to do those flashbacks, and the key to those was just keeping Cody alive emotionally for the for the other characters and for the audience, and that was the reason for doing it. But it did come at the suggestion of the network, and it was a correct one. Yes, on the poster, but that's also it led up to the surprise. It led up to, oh my God, what? You killed
That was
me?
great.
Yeah.
And I think it was so important to have him also too, just because it actually helped me and Kylie's characters really bond, to go against the odds of two women that are both in love with the same guy, but completely opposite, but they have a kinship, they have a mutual goal, and they have to kind of get through all that to be able to follow through with finding these girls and establish a partnership. And I think that's a really interesting starting off of a character choice of where these how do you get these two female leads kind of together under such crazy odds. And I love that choice. It gave us somewhere to really kind of hump to get through.
Yeah.
I'm going to get back to questions in a second, but first we're going to play a game called Big Little Skies, in which you have to tell me if the line is from Big Sky or Big Little Lies.
Cool.
Anyone can answer. Okay. First line. Did this line come from Big Little Lies or Big Sky? You're very short. I don't mean it in a negative way. Maybe I do.
Big
I
Sky.
find little people to be untrustworthy.
Big Little Lies.
Big Little Lies.
Big Little Lies is
Damn
correct.
Oh.
That's Meryl Streep. It's Meryl Streep.
Oh wait,
But
John,
you
what do you say to Penelope?
You're
You stout. Oh, that's right.
Stout. Calls her stout.
That's right.
That might be
not
one of the questions
totally-
coming up here.
You could totally hear Legarsky telling somebody that, though. I think he and Mary Louise from Big Little Lies are maybe kindred spirits. I realize that's cool to be disrespectful, to be unkind.
Big
Have you
Sky.
stopped to
Big
consider
Sky.
that? That's
Ronald.
Brian.
Episode 5.
I didn't even know.
You're like
Pardon?
a dog with a bone.
Oh, Big Sky.
Oh, Big Sky.
Yeah.
Who
John,
said
too,
that?
right?
Yeah.
John, yeah.
Yep, that's John.
Who says it?
Exactly how psychotic do you think I am?
That's gotta be
Big
Big Little
Little
Lies.
Big Little Lies.
Mm-hmm. That's
It could go
Madeline.
for our show too.
It
We're
really
psychotic.
We're not aware that we're psychotic.
You guys are right. You are so right. And for some reason, that makes me feel wrong.
Big Little Lies.
Lies.
That's Jane, Shailene Woodley. And I'm a bit of a wreck with a gun, an armed wreck.
Big Sky.
Yeah, Big Sky.
That's my
That's
favorite line.
That's Catherine.
I love that line.
Favorite line.
You didn't
Okay.
say, how come you didn't say, I see you've met my mother. She's a little bit cold.
Yeah.
That's a
I
good
love
one.
it. I love it. That's a good one. That's a good one. Well, thank you guys for being such good sports with the game. Back to questions. Our next question comes from festival sponsor City. The show is filled with continuous intensity and suspense. Are there any exercises or strategies that you use to fully transform and get into character for those really, really high octane tense moments?
That's a
I
Brian
make
question, isn't it?
Playlists. Yeah,
Come on,
more
Brian.
is for Brian.
Yeah,
Come on,
Brian.
Brian.
Take that. Brian.
How do you get there, Brian?
Yeah, you know what? I learn my lines, and I think somebody said it earlier. I just make sure I know my lines, and things kind of just make sense. Once I got in the pilot episode, it was like a puzzle that becomes easier, and the pieces kind of fall in. And like John said, also there's so many different ways to play the scenes, and because again I get to work with all these wonderful actors. And sometimes we don't know it right away. In fact, John, I remember doing a scene with you where you were playing it one way, and then in the middle of the scene you 180'd it. And so I think there's a lot of that, just kind of knowing what you're going to do, but not really having expectations, just going for it.
John, what did you do?
Yeah.
I mean, I have for this particular character, truth be told, I think this is the first time I've said this to anybody, I think, other than Brooke and Valerie. At times, I just decided the character had a brain tumor.
No.
I just decided that, he had a brain tumor, and that made sense of a lot of things. And it also allowed me to go anywhere I wanted to. Like it just opened the dance floor. It just opened the dance floor, and I was able to go from the most ludicrous to the most sinister, dark, twisted things in a breath, which is what actually people do all the time. They do it all the time. So it's not actually, we imagine ourselves to be consistent, and we're not. And this was it was a real eye opener for me to allow the writer to create whatever character, and for me not to try to make too much sense of it, except moment to moment sense. That was exciting, and and it was particularly helpful after having been shot in the head. I mean, I did not know that was coming, but it worked out well. Shot the tumor right out of my head.
For Natalie, Jade, and Jesse, what about you? I mean, you guys had to go through some extreme trauma on this show and didn't see the light of day for like 5 episodes. I'm sure that really bonded the 3 of you together too.
Yeah, we're in group therapy together now.
Playing back to just what everybody was saying earlier about just like the casting choices for these characters, there were moments where Jade and Jess and I would just be sitting and we'd be watching just John and Brian work, and it was terrifying. Like they were then, like when they're yelling at us, especially for me, it scared me. And there were moments, and what's really cool about this entire cast is that the moment that you yell cut, we're just so funny. Like everybody's just so great to work with that we all really enjoy being with each other. But I don't know, it's such a serious situation that doing research on things that are actually happening right now in the world, that we're telling the stories of these victims. There's just a lot of thought process for them. I mean, like everybody said, it's kind of in the script, but definitely in the actors as well.
It is. And I also, just to piggyback off of that, I think that the circumstances that these girls find themselves in it's such an extreme circumstance that I feel like the biggest tool to get into that headspace was honestly just being present. And that was easy to do because we had incredible actors and writing that had air, and it was a certain kind of headspace where we could go into it without having some sort of like exterior viewpoint perspective looking at it analytically in that moment. And it's intense, and we're using our bodies and our minds to get through it as opposed to being separated from it. Because you're right, it was a really intense situation that these girls are in. But I think with the cast, it was able to do that really quickly and really easy and fluidly,
Well, and I think I'd like to add too, I'm from New York, and being here filming during COVID has been incredibly isolating. So at least for me, I found being alone 95% of my time here to actually be really beneficial when diving into those harder moments, because it was like, these girls are alone. They haven't seen their families in days. They don't really know what's going to happen. And there was a genuine sense of, at least for me, homesickness that I think when I had these men yelling at me, it was like, wow, I just want to go home. And I think that was, we were able to use our actual experience here on that. Yeah, thanks, Brian.
I can't tell you how impressed I am with these young women. As you said, they were in this trailer, essentially a 3-walled closed set for 5 episodes. So it was really almost like a stage play, right? Because it was all about the words and all about the emotion, and no props and no movement. It was just the camera, gets very close, and they were able to emote and just convincingly, feel the terror and also the strength And they went through a lot of stuff in that trailer. In fact, I bought them T-shirts that says more blood, more vomit, more maggots.
And they're pink.
Yeah. I felt genuinely. There was a couple times when I was yelling at them and doing the scenes that I actually felt bad at Brian. I was like, it crossed. I've never had that happen where it crossed, because I remember yelling at Jade one time and just not feeling very good because of the circumstances. And that was strange. It's never happened to me before. But then, we'd cut and go to craft service and laugh.
Ryan expressed that a number of times, not just with these three young women, but with the actor who plays Eric, and he's throwing him around in a cage on wheels and putting a gun to his head. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't. How is this going to come off? I'm doing this to a child."
I have to say though that every one of these actors crushed their role, just crushed it. But I look at Jade and her character are both just a little badass, and just a little badass. And there's this one scene where Legarsky shoots her with a bow and arrow.
Twice.
And due to technical difficulties, we had to reshoot that scene. And I called both of them. I said, "I'm sorry, we have to reshoot that scene." She's like, "All right, let's go. All right, I'll do it." And it's so physically difficult and tasking, and it's cold and it's wet. And she goes, "Let's go." And just crushed it.
Yes, it was raining and snowing that day, and she was getting in a river. And it was that day that I knew that the crew is totally involved in this show. Very, very rarely does this happen. But I overheard one grip say to the other grip, "Hey, did you read episode 7 yet? It's amazing." And it was, "No, but I can't wait." So when you have the crew dying to read scripts, you're onto something special.
Yeah.
There's a surprising amount of singing in this show for what it is.
Not for a David Kelley show, it isn't.
True.
He always puts singing in his shows.
But he makes the producers sing too. No, he doesn't.
So for Matt and Ross, I guess, what has been the impetus behind bringing music and live performance into the show? And then for the cast, what has it been like filming those moments? Did you tell the producers like, "Hey, we like to sing," or was it sort of foisted upon you?
Tone deaf, and I had to sing. I'm literally tone deaf. I personally was petrified because Jesse is a great voice, Kylie is a beautiful voice. In the funeral scene, I was petrified doing it, and I overcome a childhood fear to sing by doing
it. Made
that,
it so special though that you can't sing.
It's really true.
It was touching. It felt really real.
No, it's vulnerable.
Yeah. It's part of what David does as part of his storytelling device, right? You look back at every series he's done, even the first series he did, Picket Fences on his own, his first series. It opened up as a musical of, I think it was The Wizard of Oz, and it was a musical. Oh, yeah, it was The Wizard of Oz, and it was a musical, and then it ended musically. From Chicago Hope, when Mandy Patinkin was singing Dulcinea, it was just so amazing. David does it in every one of his shows, and he uses it beautifully. And our show, and with these performers here, have just really scored with it. I mean, they've scored really well with it. Well, and nobody's toned. They all sound great.
When I signed on, I did not realize that there was going to be this much singing in the show. And I produce musicals. I did a film called Across the Universe, and so pretty fluent in the language. However, when we hired Frankie Pine, our music supervisor, she was told that it was going to be, a fairly straightforward show, which it is not. There are many calls out in the scripts for Frank Sinatra songs and
great music.
At the last minute, David was like, we did a reshoot on the opening with the Rolling Stones, and on a Saturday.
Kylie, I remember.
I was saying we were shooting on Monday, and on Saturday, okay, go get the rights. So I called Frankie, and I'm like, I don't know. She called the music supervisor, music publisher, and was able to get the rights within an hour, which is extraordinary.
Wow.
And on top of that, there is a lot of singing, so we have to do a lot of pre-records and a lot of rehearsal in the studio. And it's a great flavor. I mean, fortunately, we have actors who can sing, despite what Kylie said. Kylie can sing, Jade can sing, Jesse can sing, Natalie can sing. I'm sure John can sing, but
I do sing in the show, Matt. You've seen the daily.
Well, you like to pull the rug out from under us. So when are we getting the Big Sky musical episode?
I'd love to do it. I would love to. I would love it.
Oh, don't say that. They'll do it.
Bring the band back together. We can do like a little music video to promote the show.
Matt and I worked together on another show, Body of Proof, and we actually did that. We actually did make a music video just for fun. Like we showed up at a soundstage, the cast, and did a ridiculous music video just for ourselves. I think you can see it online somewhere, but it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, we should totally do that.
It was to a song from The Little Mermaid. It was called How Will You Die?
Yes. How did you die?
And it was hilarious. But ultimately, we could not release it because we didn't have the rights.
Are you kidding? The rights? What are rights? Come on.
We couldn't get the rights to the song. But yes, we did do that, and it was fun.
For Catherine and Kylie, your characters' first scene together is a barroom brawl. You've evolved into a real partnership now, but was that the first thing you shot together? I mean, what is it like having that be the basis for what is going to be this partnership and this evolving relationship across the course of the show?
I think it gave us a good starting off point. It was the bar scene, wasn't it?
It was the first scene.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it's a good starting off point because it actually gives us room to grow together. What did you think, Catherine? You like me or what?
It was very challenging, honestly. It's always tricky to do. The very first scene is like go kill each other kind of thing,
right?
And it was, truth be told, that was a really tough day shooting. I'm not gonna lie to you. We shot
that for 8 hours.
8 hours, and on screen it was only made 30 seconds at the most,
right?
So it was a really tough shooting, but it's also, you're just getting to know your co-stars, and you have to pull each other's hair, and it's not the best environment to start.
And try not to hurt each other.
Yeah.
There were times where we actually hurt each other, not on purpose, obviously, but yeah, interesting times.
Well, episode 9 really ties up this first half of the season and the story that you've all been telling. And one thing that almost all of you got, I think everyone except for Valerie, was a little bit of screen time with John Carroll Lynch. So I want to play 6 Degrees of Legarsky. What was your favorite moment acting opposite John? And I guess for you, John, what was your favorite moment overall, or the best part of the process for you?
Well, the opportunity to work with the people I worked with was wonderful, and the ongoing unfolding of Marilee and Rick Legarsky's love affair, which it truly is, all the way to the end. That they're trying to work it out, and she finally does. But I think that there's a satisfying quality to each scene that I had an opportunity to play, and I was most grateful when we finally had a scene. Catherine and I finally had a scene together because I was asleep for one of them, and so it was nice to have that scene. And it's and Valerie and I have worked together before, so that I know that would have been fun. But we'll have that in the afterlife.
Yes, thank you, John. Or yes.
We share a montage together.
Yes, that's right.
Share what?
Montage.
Yeah, that's right.
Watch tomorrow night's show.
Okay. And I'm the only one who doesn't know. Brooke was very excited about 9 and says, "You want to know what happens?" And I'm like, no. And I kind of know a little bit because Jesse told me.
I told her what happened. I was like, aren't you amazed? Can't you wait? Like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what happens when blank does blank. And she's like, oh, that's what happened.
But I still haven't seen, so I'm very excited to see it, everyone.
Yeah, sorry I spoiled it for you, Val.
Brian, what was your favorite moment with John? Because you had some really intense face-offs between the two of you.
Yeah. Yeah. We have one where we threaten each other in like metaphors, I think. We like do these kind of abstract, obscured threats, and John's like a foot taller than me, and I'm just staring at him, but he's crumbling a little bit inside. I can see him. I'm like, I got you, and so that I'll always remember doing that scene, and it was just so funny because I'm thinking like, this guy's a foot taller than me. This must look weird, because I'm looking up at him like this. But so that was that. But John and I had a lot of great scenes, and I was very grateful for that.
I actually really enjoyed doing a scene that I don't think made it into the show. One, John, and I think it was in the second episode, and it was so simple, but it was a moment where where Rick almost told Marilee what was going on. She basically was reaching out to him and saying, what is going on with you? And he was like there, and then he just went away. And it was so moving. I just found it, I really see that it as a love story as well. Even the hammer, both times.
Kylie, what about you? I mean, which version of being called Missy was your favorite?
I think my favorite scene, I loved all my scenes with you, John. You're just a masterclass, and you provide so much space to find moments. I've learned a lot from you. I know I've already told you that while crying. I think my favorite scene was probably the showdown between he and I, just for some redemption. But yeah, every single scene, I learned so much. I'm just so present when I'm with John, and he's such a presence that you can't really have a false moment when you're with him. It's very interesting and beautiful, and I'm so thankful for you, John.
Mine's actually off camera. It's like, for me, as an actor, you had that one great scene, but it's actually John, who you are as a person, is my highlight. Like it's great because we talked about isolation. We have been in our own little bubble here in Vancouver shooting. But John has always been kind of like the standing patriarch of our little family, and really has been a mentor for us. At least that's how I feel. And so for me, my highlight has been that, and just little things, and giving masks to everybody, at the end. And I got a note from you, a goodbye. It's just honestly, John, that you're just
game
a stand-up
night that he
person.
put together.
The game nights. We do these Zoom game nights. At the beginning, when we all were quarantined, we would get together and check in. We were, make sure we all were getting through the quarantine, and we did these game nights that were run by John, and it was just nice. It was really nice.
And he makes really great Nanaimo bars.
Oh my goodness!
Oh my God! Chocolate
Game
cake.
over.
I was torturing people so much that I felt I needed to do something. I want to say a couple things. There was a moment where we were rushing. I've told Natalie this already, but there was a moment when we were rushing at the end of the day. We needed to get some coverage that the camera couldn't really move, and I was to be playing the scene with Jade, and Jade was in Natalie's lap, and we had no time, and I just turned to Natalie and said, "I'm just going to play you as Jade, okay?" And she just nodded, and we just played the scene together. And the willingness to be present in that moment as somebody else's character for the other actor, because we just didn't have time to do it any other way. Those are the kind of gifts that ensemble can bring. And one of the things about isolation in this way, and the way we built it, and it was really an insistence by the people who are the hosts of the show, which are usually the leads of the show, that they insisted that we come together as a group during that quarantine, and it really paid off in the work, as it often does when you're on location. You don't have as many family distractions. You also lose, relationship with loved ones, but it can create a family in the work. And then the last thing I would say about, in the last scene with Jesse, in the dream sequence in 9, where Legarsky, any man in the world should have an opportunity to say to a group of women, I'm so, so sorry. It all just got out of hand. I was so moved by this scene. I was so grateful for it. It was a healing thing for me in a deeper way than just the material, but particularly with a material that's so steeped in misogyny, to have an opportunity to ask forgiveness is important.
And that was a beautiful moment to witness too. And especially because it felt genuine for one, but also to see Legarsky, the first time Jerry meets Legarsky is really scary. And John is quite imposing in that little trailer. But in the hospital bed, he is so almost weak. And it was really, to see his character in such a different way and apologetic was really beautiful. Yeah, it was very beautiful.
Well, we are just about out of time, but I need to ask one last question, which is that as we wrap up these 9 episodes, the show is headed in a very different direction. We're not going to see a lot of you again. Catherine and Kylie, we will still see you for sure.
And Jesse.
And Jesse.
And Brian.
And Brian. Yes, Brian. Also Brian. But Matthew and Ross, can you set up where we're headed? Can you tee up what the back half of this season is going to look like for the fans?
Well, it's interesting because normally we would have 22 episodes in a season, and this has been obviously shortened because of COVID to 16. I think what our sweet spot's going to be is in a serialized show like this, we're going to do 7 or 8 episodes of a storyline 3 times a season. So we'll have like 3 different shows basically. And the last 6 episodes of the first season has a bit of a succession feel to it. Cassie and Jenny are going to find another family that's as screwed up as the family that we just came from of Ronald and Legarsky et al. We need another family, and that family has their own issues that are both deep-rooted and on the surface. And our girls are going to get right in the middle of it. Just like the first 10 episodes, there's a lot of onion to peel. There's a lot of things to be shocked about. You're going to want to come back to see. And then I think the season ender is going to be one of the ages, one for the times.
Yeah, when we come back in episode 10, it's 3 months later, and we sort of pick up with Cassie and Jenny still, reeling from not getting Ronald, and that desire to, it still haunts them, and they want to track this guy down. And in 10, it's sort of a one-off, what I call sort of an intermezzo or a palate cleanser, because it is a sort of a self-contained story in this episode, along with some serialized elements of Ronald, and we pick him up, and there's a new character that comes in, a U.S. Marshal, that is going to aid in trying to track down Ronald. But then in 11, or towards the end of 10, we launch into this new story. And what's different about the structure, I think, is that, in the first 9, it's sort of divided into thirds. You've got our protagonists, you got Jenny and Cassie, you've got our antagonists, you've got Ronald and Legarsky and their home life, and then you have our 3 young women in peril. And what's different about this story is it's equally personal, because they're drawn into it because an ex-boyfriend of Jenny is in some trouble, and that's what sort of brings them into the story of this messed up August Osage County, hillbilly, family, and they get thrown into that. And what's different is they get thrown into peril themselves. They get thrown into a lot of personal jeopardy themselves, and essentially they become the victims of this story initially. And so it's tonally and atmospheric, and it's really exciting, completely different story, but still Big Sky worthy, with steeped in character, and terrific writing.
Based on C.J. Bach's novels, the first 9 episodes is called The Highway. The last 6 is called Bitter Roots. And we blend them in, but mostly we blend it because Ronald's character stays throughout, and he's a thorn in their side. But the last 6 episodes, though, is really those 2 blended stories plus a little extra stuff coming up that's going to lead you to season 2.
I will say that it's very exciting with a great group of actors, a new cast, new storyline, bit of a new look and feel. So it feels like a whole different direction. So I'm sure you guys will be pleasantly surprised and more twists and turns.
Well, it wouldn't be Big Sky without him.
Right.
Thank you so much for joining us for this special PaleyFest conversation with members of the wonderful cast and creative team behind Big Sky. And thanks to PaleyFest's official card, city, and festival sponsor, Verizon. You can learn more about the Paley Center by visiting paleycenter.org. Thank you, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.